Alrighty, P World History. I'm picking up on Dar al Islam from where we may have picked up in class. Um, I suppose, I don't know, we may have covered some of this. If so, you're just going to do the usual, you're going to fast forward. But I want to take you through pretty much kind of the rest of the information that we have on this civilization, and then maybe open up the doors to a little bit of South and Southeast Asia. All right. So I'm going to pick things up. Let's get things going here. Here we go. Um, where we left off, we were looking at cultural and social life, and starting into pretty much just kind of all these achievements that come from the Muslim world. And we talked about just the incredible kind of power and influence and innovating that's coming out of China. This is the other part of the world that really is just kind of really rocking it when it comes to these areas of learning and knowledge and creativity. Um, I would say that they're maybe kind of like the number two spot after China, but always kind of maybe a little bit kind of nipping at their heels. The House of Wisdom would be an example of this, and this is this was reported to be this almost like I guess we would equate to like a major university or something. The House of Wisdom ends up being destroyed when the Mongols come through Southwest Asia, and there's nothing that remains, no ruins, no archaeological dig. The Mongols were pretty good at destruction, and they took this thing down to apparently its foundations. But it was reputed to be just this incredibly influential place that learners and those who the teachers and that sort of thing would come to spend time at, and was respected as almost like this brain center of the known world at that time. And so that is a little part of the cultural life in there. Whether it's through the House of Wisdom or through other sources, the Muslims are the ones who really rediscover the works of the Greeks. Guys like Aristotle, Socrates, who had left all these writings. Those writings had been kind of left to just collect dust, and in a lot of ways, the old Greek language had transformed to such a point that a lot of the original writings of those ancient Greeks were unknown even to their own people, who had since then been conquered by the Romans, and gone through kind of all of that experience. It's the Muslims who actually are able to uncover these texts and to translate them. And they translate them into Arabic, but then from Arabic they're going to be retranslated back into all these other different languages. Some scholars kind of give the Muslims credit for quote unquote saving all of these Greek works that now are cornerstones of philosophy and political thought, and and literature, and all of that, and so that this credit goes back to the Muslims. Other areas that are pretty major in terms of them being kind of like pioneers and leaders are the three that you have listed there. We already talked about algebra, which is I forget the guy's name, but I mean it was a Muslim mathematician that algebra is named after, and medicine. It was a Muslim that came up with the incredible idea. He's trying to figure out where to place a hospital. I believe this was also in Baghdad, which kind of seemed the capital, and and to try to figure out the best place to actually position, build the hospital, he hung pieces of meat all over the city, and just chunks of animal, cow, whatever it may have been, and he studied them to see which hunk of meat rotted the slowest, and that's where he sited the hospital. He decided that whatever it was about just kind of the cross points of the conditions, whether humidity and just relative temperature and those sorts of things, that was the best place to put the humidity or to put the hospital, because as you said, the meat was affected the least there, and that meat would eventually be humans being, worked on medically. I mean, kind of these old versions of surgery and that sort of thing, and give people the best chance of being able to recover from those things. Pretty ingenious when you think about it. And then, as I think we've mentioned before, astronomy. The Muslims are huge for looking into the skies. They a lot of times have to traverse a lot of desert territory to get from one place to another, and it's a geography that's very, very easy to get lost in. And so they are almost kind of forced by necessity to look to the skies to help them to understand north, south, east, west, and then to build, create tools to help them to maintain direction. And so, later what become the astrolabe, some tools we'll talk about later on. All right, and also the Muslims known for some of their poetry that comes out of there, and then the creation of Sufism, which is kind of an offshoot from the Muslim faith. And it's a little bit more mystical in the way that it is practiced as a faith. And what it called for was like more of a direct experience with Allah. I mean, much like Christianity, we kind of look to a priest, a minister, a reverend, whoever it may be, to act as kind of like that conduit between worshipers and God. And Sufism was kind of like kicking that, think about it, like the middleman out of the way and saying, no, you can have a direct relationship with Allah. You don't have to rely on, a religious official in the Muslim church, Muslim faith. That would have been an imam, IMAM. That is your person who's kind of your, your equivalent to, one of our priests that we have them come worship with us. And so it is this offshoot that really it kind of focuses in on introspection and that sort of thing. And this comes from a lot of people who are kind of looking at the leaders by that point in time of Dar al-Islam, and they see these guys that are just living in luxury and always whether it's their clothing and the temples they're building and all that kind of thing, and it's kind of like wealth on display. And Sufism is kind of like a reaction to that, hey, getting away from what the faith is supposed to be about. It's not supposed to be all this self-aggrandizing of your, of leaders and that sort of thing. And so, it's trying to kind of bring it back to, the basics. Okay. Let's see, the merchant class. Trade is going to end up being an important one in the Muslim world. You think about geographically where they're located, they're kind of in a natural crossroads. When we look at, Asia and then Europe and then Africa, and, it's like all roads kind of go through the Middle East and are going to go through the lands claimed by Dar al-Islam. And so that's going to put traders and merchants, right there at ground zero. And as their financial standing, grows and gains more and more ground, so does the level of respect, because these are going to end up in many cases to be, amongst the wealthiest people in the Middle East, or those that are acting as kind of the middlemen, the tradesmen, and again, juxtapose that to the way that the Chinese viewed the merchant class is kind of like, you guys don't make anything, you're down here. That's not going to be the case in Dar al-Islam. They're going to be closer on up the social ladder. Slave trade. The Muslims, we talked about jihad and these wars of conquest as this empire built on faith spreads north, south, east, west, and where they go into to conquer new people, to absorb them and bring them into their empire. In some cases, they're going to take the conquered and make them slaves, and put those slaves to work for the Islamic Empire that they're building. There's one huge caveat to that, one big exception to for you to think about, remember, when it comes to the slave trade, and that is Muslims are pretty much forbidden to enslave each other. Okay, and so. They can go out if they find non-Muslims, whether they be Christians, whether they be, practicing other kind of smaller, more localized faiths, some, forms of animism that are still existing, and, that kind of thing, then fine, they can become slaves. But, the Muslims take it as far as if a slave proclaims himself to be converting to Islam and follows through on that. I mean, it doesn't isn't just saying it, just for the sheer fact of saying it, but is actually practicing it, then they are honor bound to free them because they are now a fellow Muslim, and Muslims do not enslave Muslims. All right, kind of an interesting kind of little twist on that. All right, and then women in the Islamic world definitely it's another one of those kind of like the yin and the yang. Um, definitely women in Islam are going to have higher status than either women living in communities under Judaism or Christianity. They're going to have some legal rights that you're not going to necessarily see in within those other religious faiths. Um, but at the same, so it's kind of like a little bit of that. There's a little bit of that respect aspect to it, but at the same time, when it's all said and done, sorry, ladies, it's the patriarchy. Okay, there it is. There it is again. And there are going to be parts of Islam, especially where it is practiced in a more traditional form, that is going to put a lot of very tight controls on women. The head covering, the hijab, the face coverings for some of them. The idea that the women can't be out in public without a male escort. Some of those kind of controls over women. But Muhammad, the Prophet himself that created the faith, he practiced respect for women. And so again, in the big scheme of thing, yeah, it kind of, nothing that we're going to compare it to nowadays. Well, I guess there you go, control, and there we go, respect. I guess I should have just popped those up on the screen. Sorry, every once in a while I get ahead of myself. But in the Islamic world, they did recognize that women had abilities and that they had more to offer than just as child bearers or those who take care of the home and that sort of thing. And so again, it's kind of a tightrope that they're walking between not having, again, the same rights or equality as you're going to see amongst men, but in the big scheme of things, there's parts of the world where women are doing worse. Okay, alrighty. Shift us on over to another slide. Actually, I think I've got one more of these. Yeah, that's right. I guess in evidence of some of those respect or rights that women did have. In a lot of areas, a dowry is this usually money or things of value that a woman's family gives to a man when they become married. Kind of an old traditional kind of a thing where it gives the this newlywed couple a little bit of a nest egg to start from, but it's the wife's family that gives this to the husband. Okay, and then usually that dowry is under the control of the husband. In the Islamic world, the woman had control of that money. All right, and so the ownership of the dowry came from her family. She had a voice in determining how that money could be spent, unlike in other parts of the world. Okay, and then women could initiate divorce in the Islamic world if they could prove a husband is mistreating them, is not following the Quran in terms of his conduct, those kinds of things. She could be the one to bring divorce up. And in most other cultures and civilizations at this time frame, that just was that would have been crazy talk. That a woman would have that kind of legal power in her hands, right? So again, some specific examples there of just kind of some of those differences. All right, Islamic rule in Spain. Yes, as Darul Islam reaches the heights of its power, it is able to make inroads into Europe itself, and eventually, matter of fact, here, let me get ahead of myself. 711 in the current era, so CE, is the year that Muslims invade into Spain. They launch attacks across the Mediterranean and are able to conquer and occupy a good portion of Spain. They establish a capital, place called Cordoba, And oh, I'm going to probably have to just have you spell this out. I guess I can try it. What they call their state in Spain is Al Andulus, and so that's Al dash Andule. No, if I tell you, I swear. No, I was going to say if I have this written down here, I'm going to kick myself. Anyhow, yeah, dash Andulas, Al Andulus. Okay, and that's the name that they give to it. And it's by its very nature, it is going to be land that is going to be of mixed faith. You're going to have obviously Muslims bringing in and trying to encourage conversion and that sort of thing, but they're never going to accomplish full conversion, and so a mixed faith kind of a state within the empire of Dar al Islam. All right, and it's going to be. Here we go. Let me put a couple of these other things in here. When I talk about the rulership there, I mean, they're going to practice the Muslim rulers of Spain will practice religious tolerance. They're going to definitely encourage trade. Matter of fact, this is how Europe will start to be introduced to some of the trade goods, starting their way all the way back over in Asia, in China, because they're going to be coming through the Silk Roads and through the networks in the Middle East, and now they're going to start being introduced into Europe through Spain. By the Muslims in Spain, who, by the way, go by the name. You'll see that sometimes you'll see reference to the word Moors, 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 and that's a name given to the Muslims who occupy Spain and rule it. Now, in keeping with kind of like the House of Wisdom back in Baghdad, the Muslims establish Spain as kind of this center for learning, and establish a lot of different locations where they build up kind of a almost like a replica, almost kind of a mirroring of what that House of Wisdom is all about, and kind of like where they're introducing trade and some of these Asian trade goods into Europe. They're also introducing a lot of their knowledge, a lot of their learning to Europe through these centers for learning in Spain. And so whether it is scientific, mathematic thought, whether it is philosophy, those translations from the Greeks, whether it's even some of the Asian innovations have come to China, have made their way to the Middle East, now being introduced into Europe by the Muslims. All right. I think that covers this. Yeah. All right. So I told you I want to do, I'm going to cram here about 25, 30 minutes. And so this is going to take us into a whole nother section. So we're going to be looking at South and Southeast Asia. And so getting down into kind of Malaysia, down through into modern day Indonesia, and through all that area. Okay. Let's see. Get started in their political structures. Well, when we talk about South Asia and then kind of drifting into Southeast Asia, we can talk about a lot of disunity. Okay. We've talked about kind of a little bit about India already, and establishment of the caste system, and Hindu influence and that sort of thing. And but the reality is if you looked at India as a whole, in that whole area, there's differences between the Indian people, whether you're looking in the northern part or the southern part of South Asia. You're seeing a lot of political struggle back and forth. And so when we talk about political structure, we're not going to see much of anything in these early days in the sense of basically of a really highly centralized government. It's going to be fractured, and like I said, disunity is kind of the the theme of what is going on there. Okay, take us to another page, and here we go. All right. So down in southern India, the southern part of India, this is what we're going to see. This is the South is going to, in the big scheme of things, the South is going to be a little bit more stable than what's going on up in the north. But the Chola dynasty, all right, you'll find some references. We'll say the Chola dynasty. I guess that probably sounds better because Chola dynasty, you start thinking about Pepsi or Coke or something. So maybe Chola dynasty. And then, this one's a fun one. This one's a fun one. So Vijayanagara is the empire. So a couple of these, a dynasty, an empire, these are basically what are controlling the southern part of India. So again, kind of some disunity down through that span of years, and it's a big span that we have there. But even with that disunity, it's still, because they're long lasting, they bring a certain sense of stability to the southern part of India. All right. We look to the north, and the problem with the north is a lot of the, it really comes down to a lot of their neighbors. Up in the north, we're going to have the uh, what's called Rajput, which is kind of present day Pakistan. Um, and that's going to be kind of under Hindu rule, very decentralized. You have a lot of issues with outside invasions. You're going to have Muslims, Islamic armies, as Dar al Islam is pushing further and further eastward. They're going to kind of collide with the area you see there on the map. And so they're going to start pushing their influence into this. And when we start talking about what comes to be known as the Delhi Sultanate, being ruled by a sultan, that is a Muslim term, sultan, okay? Kind of goes back to caliphates and caliphs and all of that kind of thing. And so the Delhi Sultanate will be a Muslim controlled, basically kind of a little empire within. And this is a direct result of that, that eastward spread of Dar al Islam. Okay. And they're going to end up being ruling in there for several hundred years, really is what you're going to have there. All right. And let's see, what else did I want to cover with that? Well, I mean, I guess it's worth saying that, I mean, up there in, kind of our northern region, up in this area, you are going to have this real mix of Hindus and Muslims. And that's something that is going to have influence going into the future. But we start seeing that mix very early on here in Unit 1, as the Muslims come marching in and establishing that sultanate. That is where, I mean, they don't force conversion on everyone. They realize that the Hindu faith is pretty well established, and it's be easier just to try to allow both faiths to coexist. And so you are going to have that. Let's see, where else are we going? Religion in South Asia. Okay, well, so I guess it's a little bit more of what I've been talking about here, and that is that idea that Hinduism is still going to be a huge influence. Okay, but now we have Islam that is now starting to make its inroads. All right, and then we also have Buddhism. All right, let's not leave that out of the mix too. And probably actually, when the Muslims are trying to convert the people of South Asia, actually they find they have more luck converting Buddhists than they do Hindus. I don't know if that's just because of Buddhism not having the same kind of strong cultural hold in India. But that is one thing that the Muslims do take note of, is that, if you want to try to get some converts, you need to find where those Buddhists are, and they're more likely to switch over. Whereas the Hindus are going to, they're going to hold firm. Okay. So I think that's what my whole Hinduism and Islam connection there is referring to, is just this coexistence, and will end up being a very influential coexistence. And when we look nowadays at a largely Hindu India and a largely Muslim Pakistan, well, I'm getting way ahead of myself. I guess that'd be kind of getting in the area of kind of a spoiler alert. All right. Yeah, that gets us into our conversion of Islam. Like we talk about, some Hindus convert to Islam, but more often than not, it's going to be amongst the Buddhists. All right. And then, you know what? No, I'm going back. Sorry about that. Oh my goodness, where am I? One other thing I wanted to note when I'm on number 2, something else you can write about there, is that you're going to find a lot of people at the very bottom of the caste system who are going to convert to Islam. And it's going to be under that belief that that maybe, in those northern parts of India that are under Muslim control, if they convert to Islam, it will improve their social standing. And so they convert on that very idea. It's like, finally maybe a chance to get out of this bottom rung of the caste system. They convert, and in exchange, in gratitude for all of that, their Muslim rulers do absolutely nothing. Right? In the end, those low caste converts, they see little to no social consequence to making that conversion. Again, just once again showing just how unbelievably influential that caste system was, and how very, very rigid that caste system was. All right, there we go. All right, now we can go a little further here. We'll see how far I get through this because I am watching the clock. I'm watching the clock. So let's look at some social structures. Just talking about it and just kind of circling back on it again. All right. And that is just, when we talk about the caste system, even with the Muslims coming in, another good example of, what we talk about continuity. Okay. Yes, the Muslims do bring some change in that they introduce a new faith into that region, that part of the world. So there's your change. But if we can talk about continuity, is like I just talked to you about, it doesn't seem like anything, including a whole nother religion moving into the area, taking control of the northern part, of the whole region. And it's still, it holds firm. That is a beautiful example of continuity. All right. Although those people trying to convert, hoping they wouldn't agree with me that it was, anything beautiful at all. And so, yeah, and that continuity, for the good or the bad of it, whether you're at the top of the caste system or the bottom, that is one of the, in some parts of South Asia, it's one of the few things that is maintaining some kind of stability with all this change that is happening, with Muslims coming in and, establishing their control. The one certainty, the one thing that just kind of keeps chugging along is the caste system. Okay. And so when I talk about conversion and social status, is just that reminder that conversion to another faith seems, no, it's, the caste system is impervious. Conversion is not going to get you moved up anywhere than you would have been if you had not converted. All right. Okay. Cultural interactions. What are we going to talk about here? Well, let's see. Hold on here. I got a dog scratching. Apparently, dog wanted to go outside. All right. Sorry about that. So what are we looking at here? We're looking at a real blending of both really kind of Indian and Islamic culture. The math, the astronomy. I mean, the Muslims bring that learning with them. The people of South Asia, they embrace it and do some of their own improving on it. This is always an interesting picture here for me. This is the Qutub Minar. And so what you have here is a Hindu temple. Okay, that's the lower part of this building. And then on top of that is is basically what we'd call, well, it's a mosque. It's kind of a little tower kind of shape there is a mosque. And so, you even see kind of this combining of the holy houses of both, of the Hindus and the Muslims, all kind of blended into this one little building, the Qutub Minar. All right. So you've got that. We've got blending of language. We've got a new language that is created during this time called Urdu. And it's this language that is kind of this reflection of, Arabic that's being brought in and being introduced to, the area and kind of blending with language, the native language that was already there. You go, fast forward to nowadays, Urdu is the main language spoken in Pakistan. All right. And let's see, what else do I have? Oh, we'll end on this. It is, the Bhakti movement. So when we talk about women, the Bhakti movement was this movement to try to give elevate really the social status of women in South Asia. It's very much kind of hinged in the Hindu movement, and kind of a little like Sufi Islam. A little bit more of that kind of mystical approach to it. My favorite part of the Bhakti movement was its attempt to try to end an old tradition called sati, S-A-T-I, sati. And sati was this tradition where when a a woman's husband would die, and typically their way of sending someone to the next world was to um, was to build kind of a pyre and burn a body on top of it. And sati was this movement, kind of this tradition, I should say, not movement, where the widow of this man who had died would show her undying love to her deceased husband by throwing herself into the flames of this funeral pyre. Okay, this usually like a stack of whether it was logs with the body on top, and so it was kind of like almost like this ritual suicide by burning alive. And the Bhakti movement was saying that's crazy. I mean, it's too. We're really sad that the husband died, but why a woman should have to give her life up because the man died, and so it really pushed back against this sati tradition, that sort of thing. Although there would be very, very traditional parts of South Asia that would cling to it. It's kind of like we talked about with foot binding. There's gonna be as things change over time. There's gonna be a lot of people saying, yeah, that really is. Let's give that up. And then other parts that are going to be kind of like, no, it's a tradition. We can't let it go. That kind of thing. Okay, guys, I've run over my 30 minutes by a minute and almost and a half. So that's the place where we will hit the brakes. When we get it back together, we are on to Southeast Asia. We've spent all of our time pretty much on South Asia. Now we need to focus it to Southeast Asia. That's where we'll be to next. Hope you got plenty of information here. I tried, guys. I tried. But I'll let you go from there. See ya.